Welcome, everyone. Let's get started. We have a few promises for you as we kick off our time together today. We promise that we'll share what we've been hearing across industries about how COVID-19 has impacted business and how they're responding.
That's right, Gary. And then we're going to dig into those 4 main keys to the psychology of how employees make decisions about how they change in times of uncertainty. And then we're going to provide you some tips, a bit of an action plan so that you can apply those in your own business to ensure that the changes that you need to make have the staying power that they need. Are we ready to get started?
We are ready to get started.
All right. So we did do we conducted a survey, a cross-industry survey to understand how companies are being affected by COVID-19, and we received hundreds of responses. And we got out our little data knives, trade secret, and we sliced that data up, looking at factors like the size of the organization, the industry, and even the role type of the people who responded. And we did see some interesting stuff. Some of it not a surprise, but some good insight in there as well. So one of the things that probably isn't a surprise to everyone is that COVID-19 really is redefining the way that we do business. So 80% of our respondents to the survey said that their organization their business is being impacted, and in many cases, significantly or extremely significantly, they're feeling those impacts. But that varies across industries. So in retail and hospitality, we're seeing almost everyone impacted. Not a surprise, as most of us are working from home and we're not shopping and we're not on airplanes. And we're not staying in hotels. Healthcare, obviously seeing a huge impact, manufacturing as well. Other industries feeling a little bit less of that impact, but I think it's still important to note that even in those industries that in some ways we consider a little bit pandemic proof, they're seeing it. So over a third of respondents for areas like financial services, energy and utilities, tech and communications saying that they're seeing a significant to an extremely significant impact. When we think about what's top of mind for these folks as we go forward, what are some of the big concerns? Those vary a little bit by industry as well. So this fun chart here basically is showing you what the top 3 concerns are for each of these industries based on our survey participants. So for example, you can see kind of going down the retail and hospitality row here, that changing customer expectations, consumer confidence, operations are really the things that are most top of mind for those folks in retail and hospitality. And it really makes sense considering they're totally redesigning the way that they need to engage with their customers going forward. Operations really is a key trend across most of these industries. One of our survey respondents put it best when they said, well, you can't social distance machinists and they can't work from home. So they've really had to do all kinds of crazy things with their operations to ensure that they're still running, that they're still meeting their customers' needs. But just about everyone's supply chain and work process has been disrupted. So that's a key issue, as well as changing customer expectations and workplace safety, obviously something that is top of mind for many of us. Now, when we look at this a little bit differently, when we go away from industry, but we look at it from a role perspective, we see it a little bit differently. So it's interesting for us to note that the C-suite are the ones who are really feeling the most heat from COVID-19. So 55% of our C-suite respondents felt that COVID-19 will have an extremely significant impact on their business. So a real 10 out of 10 impact on their business. And their biggest concerns were both customer expectations and employee expectations. That's sort of rising to the top for those respondents, as well as operations, strategic agility, strategy execution, and organizational resiliency. These are all things that are top of mind. These are key concerns for the C-suite as they think about how to move forward.
Yeah. So Bridget, we are 55 strong in the conversation right now. So everybody, we want to hear from you. Out of these 4 challenges with the purple check and the round box, what challenge resonates with you the most? And it could be more than one. What challenge or challenges resonate with you and your business the most? All, Raylene says, right? Quick. Raylene's like, all, most.
in all caps too. Raylene was shouting it to us.
We feel you. Who else? Which one or ones are resonating with you all the most?
Right. And feel free to write in shorthand. I know I never spell resiliency right on the first try.
We've got resiliency, customer experience and employee expectations, agility and strategy execution, resiliency, customer and employee expectations, agility. Resiliency and agility really seem to resonate. Customer and employee expectations, ops. We've been hearing ops an awful lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. It's all over, Bridget, which I think just shows that they're all relevant and depends where you're sitting and what kind of business you're in.
Yeah. We are keeping a lot of plates spinning right now as business leaders. And if we were to summarize the big question that's on everyone's mind, I think it would be, will the organization be able to pivot fast enough and in the right direction without total burnout? We've never seen this type of collective stress as a human population, in recent history. We are all a little stressed to the max. So how do we ensure the organization has that agility, it has that resiliency, it's meeting those changing customer expectations without driving us all kind of nuts, right? So a lot of people talked about agility and resiliency, and I want to talk about those two terms a little bit to make sure we're kind of all on the same page as we think about them. So when we think about resiliency as an organization, really what we're thinking about is, are we seeing the changes ahead, right? So are we looking ahead? Are we looking around the corners for those changes? Are we adapting? And then are we recovering from that change activity? Are we able to cope with change and not be broken by it as an organization and not feel a sense of chaos from it? Agility is really more about the flow of solutions, of ideas through the business. Can we come up with solutions? Can we come up with ideas? Can we quickly make decisions about what to do about those ideas and solutions? And then can we communicate and implement them effectively and quickly? That's really what agility is all about.
And I'm curious, Bridget, is there any particular order you see these two in, or is there a reason why you said resiliency and then agility here?
It's really not a matter of sort of sequential order. It's really thinking about them as two sides of the same coin, right? So one kind of breaks without the other. So if we are constantly looking ahead, but we're not creating any ideas and we're not flowing innovations through the organization, we're going to stop looking ahead, right? If we're super agile and we pivot all the time, but we have no recovery in our organization, we have no coping mechanisms, we're going to break that direction too, and we're going to burn out. So you got to think about these things as really sort of two sides of the same coin. They got to go hand in hand.
In balance. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah. And when you think about them, when you think about what enables both resiliency and agility, it's about people, right? So if we're going to have the steady flow of new ideas, if we're going to have communication, if we're going to be able to cope with challenges without threatening our organization's purpose and values, people really lie at the heart of those concerns. And we need to understand where our people are and how they're thinking about things, and really design changes with that in mind, and move forward from where they are versus where it is that we wish they would be. So before we can innovate, we've really got to assess our people's mindsets. We need to be asking some really honest questions, and we need to ask them at all levels of the organization. We need to be asking this at leaders, we need to be asking managers these questions, and we need to be asking our individual contributors as well. Are they clear on what's expected of them? And yes, we need to ask leaders that question. Do they have the tools and resources that they need? Do they have the psychological safety to speak up and provide input? Do we know who's tapped out, who's stressed out, but who's ready for more? And are we clear on how they're anticipating the consequences of all of this crazy pandemic chaos for the organization? These are all really important things to understand, and we need to kind of take that moment to assess. And sometimes when I say to people, we need to take that moment to assess, they go, I'm trying to move fast here. Like I gotta go, I gotta innovate. Why do I need to stop and ask these questions? We just did an employee engagement survey in February and everything's fine. Well, a lot has changed, right, since February, first of all. A lot of things have changed since the beginning of June. So we need to really make a conscious choice to understand our people. And these questions in particular are really important because these are the kinds of factors that influence how people make decisions in times of uncertainty. So Gary, I don't know if you've noticed, but we live in a time of imperfect information. Would you agree?
Especially if the information's coming directly from me, Bridget, it's absolutely imperfect.
Well, that is sort of a tale as old as time, Gary. But for the rest of the world and all of the information coming out of it, I would say that is pretty imperfect information. One day it's, this thing, the next day it's this, our rules in our companies are changing, our rules in our cities are changing just about every day.
So I'm going to agree that it's imperfect, but what I also think we need to stress is right now, I don't think there's malintent or bad information. It's just changing so quickly that we don't know from one day to the next. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good call out. Yes, it's not a grand scheme or anything. It's really just, it's the time that we live in, right? Now, if you think about 9 months ago, let's say, when you were implementing a change in your organization, let's say you were putting in a new software, you were introducing a new process, or maybe going live with a new product, there was quite a bit of certainty around that change. There was predictability, right? We were able to, within degrees, predict the outcome. And so while people kind of went through the normal change curve around that change, for the most part, it's a pretty easy transition. This is your brain on uncertainty, all right? So when you have an outcome that is totally unpredictable, we're changing and we don't know what's going to happen, it creates a lot of uncertainty in our brains. And our brains process information very differently when we're faced with this kind of uncertainty. Luckily, though, we know how people assess situations like this. So behavioral economics and psychology and sociology have studied how our brains process information in times of uncertainty. And we all are wired to consider the same set of factors as we try to make sense of uncertain times. And when we assess those factors, our emotional reaction to that is going to dictate our willingness to change and how we're going to change. Are we going to adopt the behaviors that the company wants us to adopt, or are we going to go our own way based on our assessment of the situation? But once we understand how people are assessing the situation, we're able to, as business leaders, design our change from where people are and kind of help them through those places where they're feeling most uncertain or they're feeling most unpredictable about what's going to happen. So what I want to do is I want to introduce you to how our brains assess times of uncertainty, how they determine how to make decisions at that time. And there's really 4 main keys. These are the 4 main keys from the title. We're getting to the point here, folks. So here are the 4 change keys. The first thing that we assess, and we do this subconsciously, we're not really thinking about it, but the first thing we're assessing is the current state. How do I feel right now? What is my level of stress right now? Do I feel good about where I am? Do I feel personally impacted by what's going on around me? So we're going to see how people feel and what they see around them as it relates to, in this case, COVID-19. Then we're going to be assessing our capabilities to handle that situation. Do I know what's expected of me? Do I have the tools and resources I need? When I look at this at an organizational level, does the organization have what I think it's going to take in order to accomplish the job ahead? The third key is I'm going to be looking at the future state. So I'm going to be making an assessment as to how this is going to impact the future of the organization. The business viability of the organizational values, the culture, my job security. I'm going to be assessing all of those things. And I'm going to determine, do I think this is going to be a big impact, a small impact? Do I think it's going to be a positive outcome, a negative outcome? Do I think it's going to be a mixed bag? And then I'm going to be thinking, does that line up with the way everybody around me is looking at this too? Or am I assessing this differently? Finally, I'm going to be looking at leadership. I'm going to be looking at the people who are making decisions, who are really kind of steering the ship. And I'm going to say, What's been their response so far? Has this been a good response? Has it been a bad response? What's working about this approach and what's falling flat? So I'll give you an example of how this really does impact a person and how they assess a situation. So we had one of our survey respondents, when we asked the question, what are you most concerned about? They listed workplace safety. And we said, why is this a top concern for you? This is an open-ended response. The person replied, my leaders really made a mess of getting us out of the office. I don't trust them to do a good job putting us back in it. So they assessed the appropriateness of the response in the current state as being less than ideal. And they're thinking, what does that mean for me? And am I going to follow along when we say, hey, everybody, let's go back to the office? Am I going to make the decision to do that? Am I going to behave that way? Or do I not trust that, and therefore I'm going to maybe sandbag that, or I'm just going to behave differently? Just a little example of how we assess these situations, even when we're not thinking about it.
And what it really says, Bridget, in your explanation, is that underneath these keys is your ability as an organization to either build or break trust.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, which is so key. So to our participants, we're curious, what key or keys do you believe you're strongest in today? If you're sitting back and you're back of the envelope assessing your organization, which of these 4 keys do you feel you're strongest in today? And just go into that chat box and go ahead and put the number in, key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and let us know where you feel most confident. Future state, 3, 2, capabilities, 1, current state, 4, leadership, again, 2, 4, 1, 2, and 3. Good, Bill. Hi, Bill. Good to see you. 1, 2, and 3. Lucky you, Bill.
So close to batting a thousand there, Bill.
1, 2, 3, 4. Brian's feeling doing well in all 4 of them. So 1 and 2 from Lori. So for most of our participants, yes, good work, Brian. For most of our participants, there's at least 1 missing or 1 opportunity. And for most people, there's even more. But let's go ahead and just get a little bit a finer point on that. Where do you have the greatest opportunity for improvement? And for this one, let's just list 1. If you thought about the 1 where if you invested, you get the biggest bang for your buck, which is it? So 3, which is future state, 3, 4, leadership again. Yeah, defining that future and having the leader's voice in there, those are big. 2, capability building. Again, 3, 3 and 4, 3 and 4. This seems to have a winner here of 3 and 4 followed by 2, but I haven't seen anybody show up with a 1 for the greatest opportunity, Bridget.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit not surprising considering that I would have said, like, had we done this little straw poll back in March, 1 might have been a bigger issue because people were feeling a lot of stress as we were shutting down, we were making decisions, and we were doing all these things. I feel like some people have felt a sort of a relative calm. Some people call it the new normal, where people don't feel that level of stress and they've been able to sort of open conversations again. So I'm not surprised that the current state, it feels like it has a sense of equilibrium at this point and people are ready to kind of move forward.
For sure.
Which is sort of how, the response that we got at Root. So I think one of the great things about using a framework that kind of thinks about how people perceive on an individual level is that you can then use that framework across all the altitudes of the organization. You can look at it from an organizational level, a team level, or an individual level. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. So at an organizational level, you can do a survey. You can really go broad. And we actually did this at Root. We wrote a survey. We gave it to everybody at Root. And we found out a couple of things we didn't know about ourselves. It revealed that certain roles were undergoing a level of stress we didn't anticipate. And so we were able to move and make sure that those folks got more support and more resources. and we more clearly articulated expectations. So we sort of shored up their capabilities. But we also found out that, like you, people were feeling okay about the current state. They felt pretty good about the immediate response to the crisis, but they were hungry for that longer-term vision, that future state. And there was a lot of misalignment in terms of the impact people thought the future state was going to have and the clarity of that plan. And so we knew that they were ready for more conversations about strategy and longer-term vision. Now, this happens on a small scale too, and you can do it without even it being an official formal assessment. So I actually was talking to a team leader the other day for a project that I'm doing for a technology company. He has a business development team. They had to pivot a little bit hard in their sales process because they were used to face-to-face. He felt like he had set those expectations, gave them what they needed, and things did not go well. He felt like people were really paralyzed. And when he dug into that, he uncovered that there were some specific capability gaps. There were some future state concerns that were really knotting people up. So he had to work with that team to ensure that he reset expectations and created new resources for them to really kind of get the work flowing again. But the way that they were assessing the situation was keeping them from changing their behavior. So it really can work at a team level. And it's something that, if you're game for it, we would like you to try. Here's an action plan. But don't worry, don't start taking crazy notes or anything. We're going to give you all of this information. We're going to give you a cheat sheet with the 4 keys and a set of questions to start you thinking about the types of questions you want to ask around these things, as well as a day-by-day action plan. So let's dig into it. We can look at how you can use these 4 keys and sort of practice using them as an assessment. So the first thing you're going to do is just determine what it is you're going to look at. What are you going to assess? Who's the team you're looking to assess? It might be your direct team, or maybe if you play some sort of business partner role, you might want to be looking at a different team. And the specific issue you want to focus on. So it might be COVID-19 in general. It might be moving back into the office after working from home. It might be the new policies around social distancing, whatever sort of that big change is. You can focus as narrow or kind of as broad as you want in that. And then communicate with those people. Let them know that what you're doing. The second thing you want to do is just assess yourself first. So ask yourself these questions, ensure that you understand what your perception of the situation is. Then take a few days to listen to others. So schedule time to sit down, really understand the perspectives. Don't try to problem solve in the moment, but understand the perspectives and their emotional reactions to the uncertainty. Because we all are going to have like kind of different levels of emotional reaction to these uncertainties. Then consider it. Consider where are your areas of strength or weakness within this particular team. It might be the same strengths and weaknesses you just sort of outlined in our little straw poll here. It might be a little more nuanced, or maybe it's a little bit different for this team. But consider those strengths and weaknesses, and then consider, what are my next steps? How do I design change from my user backward, now knowing where they are in these 4 different areas? And then finally, we really want to hear how it went and what your ideas are and what ideas you might want from us. So contact Gary or I. We're happy to sit down, no charge, sit down for an hour, go over your results, go over your thoughts, and maybe provide you with some examples or some experiences that we've had on how to help people move forward and get unstuck from some of these areas.
So I'm curious, in this day 1, Bridget, you're asking people to determine the issues that they're going to focus on. So before we move to Q&A, I'm curious from our participants, what area or what issues do you think you're going to focus on? If you're going to do this 5 to 7 day challenge here, what issues do you want to focus on?
Yeah, I think Carol made a really great comment here that I just want to highlight for those of you who aren't following on in the chat, that COVID-19 was a sort of different change because it was a change done on to people versus leaders being able to think about a change and sort of implement it. You're right, it's a whole new ball game. But we've seen those types of ball games before, right? Where you've got to think on your feet, you've got to adapt, and that's where that agility and that resiliency come in. Yeah.
So I wasn't great at asking the question, but I love the answers that we're getting. So there's a I'm just trying to click through here. Desire to listen, focus on what it is that people are saying. Listening is huge. Days 3 to 5, again, listening. So so here's an issue, ability to connect in a virtual world versus physical world and how to optimize that. Mm-hmm. That is on everybody's mind. Let's see what Lori had to say. We've conducted pulse surveys to give us further insight. Curious, Lori, what did those pulse insights tell you? What's on the minds of your people? We're encouraging you to take a look at this plan that we put together and to try it, because once you leave here today, within 24 hours, we're going to be able to provide you with a link to this recording so that you'll get all that information. You'll also get the questions that you can ask, or at least a starter kit that you can ask, and this 5-day plan as well. Lori has come back and she said, need to communicate better, better equipped, better tools to work from home. Yeah, that's now that we really realize that people are going to be working from home for the long term, that seems to have really set in. That reality has come to roost. We need to better equip and give people better tools to work from home. So we're going to move to Q&A, but just as a reminder, you'll get the link to this recording, you'll get the questions, and you'll also get that 5-day plan. For those of you who can hang out with us a little bit longer, Bridget and I are willing to stay on as long as you have questions, and if you can just put those in the chat box. For those of you who have to leave, Bridget and I have supplied both of our email and telephone numbers to our root desk phones. You are welcome to call or email with any questions or set some time to talk. And for those of you who can hang out.
Yours might be your root desk, Gary, but mine's my cell phone, so they can just call me.
Yeah, I just, in full disclosure, I stopped that a while ago after doing a lot of these webinars, because some people are on different time zones, and we get friends from Europe, and so I've moved it to my desk phone for now. But I do respond to all of them. So let's hang out a bit here, and let's hear from you right in the chat box. What are you curious about?
Yeah. Well, Gary, I'm curious, you've had a ton of conversations with folks lately. As you think about those 4 keys, where are you seeing kind of the greatest room for opportunity, or where are you seeing people be concerned?
Well, it's interesting. It was totally validated by the response we got from this group. I hear repeatedly from our past clients, current clients, and potential clients that this future state thing and the leadership are both big deals, right? The leaders are oftentimes talking about the future state, but unlike yesterday when that future state could have been a year or 5 years, that future state may be 30 days. And so I think I'm seeing a need to set a new expectation of what future state means, and to get leaders comfortable with saying things like, I don't know, and this will likely change. So I was in agreement with the group.
Getting comfortable with that, as well as, I think one of the important things to know is, as you're assessing this, there might be aspects of future state that are just unknowable right now. And that might make people feel anxious or uncertain. But I think it's important for us to understand, even more than understanding, are they clear on exactly what the future state is? Do they have confidence when someone's thinking about the plan, that somebody's like at the wheel, right? Oh. And do they have a sense of, is their sense of the outcomes here matching leadership, or are they misaligned? So is leadership really positive and optimistic, and they're all negative? Well, you've got a communication gap. And the opposite is true too. If everybody is super positive and optimistic and leadership's behind closed doors with their hair on fire, well, we're setting unrealistic expectations. So it's really important, more so that we see an alignment in future state than we see everybody with exact clarity.
Yeah, and I think Raylene is talking a little bit here in chat to what you're saying. Her question is, how do you stop the madness, ? We were put into a position to make quick changes to adapt to this new environment, but when does it stop? I know what my answer is to that. Bridget, what's yours?
Oh, no, I'm dying to hear yours, Gary. Go for it.
Well, it doesn't, Raylene. I'm sorry to tell you that there is no Santa Claus here, But I don't think this stops. It doesn't stop, certainly in the short term. And if we had a vaccine tomorrow, it'd be a whole nother swing of adapting to a new normal. So right now, I think what we've got to tell ourselves and our people is that change is equivalent to survival and even flourishing. And so change is something, adapting to change, adapting to it quickly is an essential part of your company, your team, and you as a leader if you want to survive what's going on in the marketplace today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what I'm reading between the lines for you, Raylene, is that your resiliency as an organization has been depleted, right? So we all kind of went out thinking, well, you know, for those of us who are in office jobs, we left our offices thinking in 2 weeks we'll be back, right? And so we all hustled, we sprinted because we figured we'll pivot and then in like 2 months it'll come back. And then it was 3 months, and then it was 4 months, and then it was 5 months. And based on the most recent numbers, it might go on and on and on and on. And so we gassed out, you know, we kicked too quick a little bit. And so this is an opportunity, I think, to have a really concerted effort on how do we sort of restore resilience in the organization? How do we sort of replenish energy within the organization and start to think of this more as, you know, interval training versus a quick sprint?
Yeah, we've got a resounding yes from Raylene. I think it's just it's an important message as leaders to convey to our people, because if our managers and our frontline are looking for the end point, we can be in trouble. Because as you've just said, yeah, Bridget, that end point keeps getting kicked down the street, and we don't know when the end point is. And of course, when we find that end point, we're in for another whole pivot and new reality. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bridget, your study, I have to say, your study was really intriguing. Love the keys that you came up with. So thank you for doing the study. Thank your team for bringing it to us. And we're looking forward to sharing it all with you within 24 hours of this call. So thank you so much, Bridget. Always good hanging out with you.
Always fun, Gary. I miss our podcast chat. So this has been like old times.
It inspires me for us to record a new podcast. So we'll do that. For everybody who's joined us, thanks for sticking with us today. We hope you found this beneficial. You are welcome, Bill. Very good to see you. And we hope to see you all again on an upcoming Root webinar. Thank you all. Stay safe.
Thank you. Take care.